Gotta be honest, I think the worst day I've had all year was the day the voice in my head told me to keep running. I'm not schizophrenic or anything, I mean it more in a gut feeling sense. The day it screamed at me to keep going, to sprint as fast as I could in the direction of home, was the day everything went wrong. I jog every night. I like the cool air that the sunless sky brings, and I like how there aren't many people around. I don't really gel well with the neighborhood. A lot of nuclear families and sheltered suburban homes. The neighbors chat and gossip over picket fences, have barbecues with each other's families, can probably remember the names of each and every person on their street. I live on my own, and I barely talk to anyone. So I stick out like a sore thumb. I hear people whisper about me behind the fences as I pass by, that I'm some sort of creep, that Mom was a paragon of neighborliness, and I was just waiting for her to die. It's bullshit, of course. I would love to leave if I had a job that paid enough, but I don't. I work at a Walmart, where I bag groceries, stock shelves, and get paid dirt, so I'll probably never leave. Still, asshole neighbors aside, jogging is nice. The neighborhood's got some nice parks, and everything's really well lit, so I don't really feel spooked about being jumped. No jerks, no worries, no need to stay in the house and brood about it all. It's nice. Well, it was. As I mentioned, my gut kind of ruined that whole deal. I had a really shitty morning, which transitioned to a really shitty afternoon yesterday. Heard the same old shit from the neighbors, and a couple of assholes were yelling for my manager at work. They hold me personally responsible for their favorite soda being out of stock. I was ready to have a really long jog that night, and I began my regular circuit, heading out the front door, down the street towards the park. There's this one bench by the entrance that I mark my progress by as I do a whole lap around the place. On a good night, I can lap past it at least 10 times. There was a guy sitting there last night. He didn't look like he lived in the neighborhood. In fact, the poor guy didn't really look like he lived anywhere. Really. His clothes looked busted up, like he hadn't found some new ones in a while. He was sitting, smoking a cigarette, his back bending forward as if a weight hung from his head. We noticed each other, and I nodded at him, and he nodded back. It was a nice change. Usually people don't respond when I try to be polite. Either that or they scowl. A nod was nice. I did my first lap. The leaves on the trees on either side of the park blew gently in the wind. A gentle white noise to numb the anger that had piled up throughout the day. Past the little lake where a couple ducks slept, heads curled into their wings, and back to the bench. The guy had begun to get into a sleeping position. He was rolling out a newspaper, and he'd placed his backpack at the end of the bench. We nodded again. Second lap. I noticed the little hum from the lights that ring the path this time around. That, mixed with the wind through the leaves, created an ambient soundtrack for the jog. The duck still slept. Back to the bench. He'd wrapped up. His head was on a backpack. I could imagine this was a rare night of peace for him. The air was cool, but not too cold. It was nice. We could share in that peace here. Third lap, humming lights, brushing leaves, nothing else but gentle noise. Who could worry about today on a night like this? It was so peaceful. I felt peaceful. No need for anger here. I could have jogged forever and that'd be okay. I could be okay. I got to the pond. No ducks. They must have scooched off to find a spot without the sound of jogging feet. Back to the bench. He was sleeping soundly still. Fourth lap. I listened to the hum and the wind. Or, I tried to. The wind had died down by now. The leaves were still. The lake was still too. No ducks, no ripples. Just the hum of the streetlights. It was quiet. Another passed around the bench. Like everything else, the man was still. He was enjoying the quiet. Fifth lap. No wind. No leaves rustling. No humming lights. No humming lights? I looked up. There they were, bright as ever. Yet they made no noise, not a sound. kept jogging. The air was dead. Not a noise to be heard save the sounds of my shoes hitting the path and my breathing. I was aware of it then. The way I was breathing heavier. A little harder than usual. I looked at the pond, saw nothing but the still water, and breathed a little heavier and heavier. I was scared, I think. I didn't know why. It wasn't like the stillness was going to kill me. It just felt wrong. Like the night's heartbeat had stopped. I was breathing harder as I rounded the bend and headed back towards the bench. Before I stopped in my tracks. I listened. I could hear something else. Something in my breathing. I took in some air and held it. Something else was breathing with me. A hacking, moaning breathing from across the way. It sounded like a cat being strangled in slow motion. The guy on the bench, maybe he was choking or something. I stole my nerves and kept jogging. As the bench got closer, I could see, clear as day, someone who wasn't there before. As the man lay sleeping, a woman, at least 7 feet tall, was leering over him. She wore this long, tattered dress, which frayed at the ankles. It was once white, I think. It now had gray, brown, and what looked to be red stains across the entire thing. It was like a horrific Jackson Pollock hung from her shoulders. I got closer. Her hair was as long, black and slick as oil. I could see her shoulders rise and fall with every laborious breath, parting and closing the strands, revealing a long, pale neck. I kept jogging. There were 2 voices now. One told me to jog in the other direction. The other told me to get her the hell away from the sleeping man. The only guy I'd met in ages who hadn't thrown a judgment my way. And as I got into tossing distance, all of a sudden she stopped breathing. I stopped jogging. I stared at her, waiting for her to take another breath, for her shoulders to rise again. Seconds passed. 10. 15. She had to breathe at some point. I opened my mouth to get her attention, but before I even let out a sound, her head jerked, loudly creaking sideways like a door with a bad hinge, turning until I could make out an unmistakable eye through the strands. It was white. It was deep. It was full of hate. Fucking run. The man was still there. Fucking run. Get the fuck away from it. Go, 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 go. She was gonna kill him. She's like, I can get you next. You just run, you dumb fuck. Just fucking run. Just fucking run. Just fucking run. I sprinted to the left, through the park entrance. I couldn't look back. A deep primal part of me that rarely made itself aware in my consciousness just knew for sure that woman was gonna kill me if I did. It told me to run. Run and don't stop running until I was back home in bed, so I did. I sprinted past the shop I worked at, past the police station, and to my front door. I fumbled with keys, opened it, screwed my eyes shut as I slammed it closed, and I stopped, waiting for a sound. But the only thing I could hear was my own ragged breathing. I sobbed, pained tears dropping onto my floor as I slumped against the door and let exhaustion and shock take me. The following morning, I was awoken by heavy-handed knocks against the door. Jumping up, I squinted through the peephole, fearful, afraid of spotting long black hair. I can't say that my tension was relieved when I saw a couple of police officers instead. I opened the door, and they asked me if I could come in for questioning. Something about a person that had been found the previous night. I didn't say anything. I just nodded and got in the car. I didn't care where I was going or what they wanted. I was just thankful that I was alive, that my gut guided me right. A few things happened next that kinda eroded that sense of thankfulness. First of all, the man at the park. The one with the woman, dead. He was on a bench, white as a sheet, deep handprints bruised into his neck. I wonder now, as I did in the interrogation room at the time, if I could have saved him. Second, the police pinned it on me. They told me that security footage showed the entrance of the park, and it showed the man walking in about 20 minutes before I did. Then, 20 minutes after I arrive, I sprint out of the park. A part of me was desperate to tell them the truth of things, but they never mentioned a 7-foot-tall horror appearing on any of the footage. And these guys seemed pretty made up on their decision regarding my innocence. Finally, my goddamn fucking neighbors, when the police had talked to them, they'd gone on and on about how I was antisocial, a bad egg, some scumbag who only left home past midnight to skulk around and look for trouble. They were so fucking positive about I was some nutcase that I'd been desperate to meet someone somewhere secluded for years, just waiting for the chance to kill. So they threw me in a cell. And it was all because my gut told me to run, to sprint home. Not to tell anyone or call the police or to stop the creep from hurting that poor guy, but to run. Fucking coward. They told me that in the morning my attorney was going to arrive. I was set to go to court within the week. At least they obliged me when I asked for some pen and paper. I felt like I needed to get this all down. Initially, I wanted to get my story straight, maybe work with what I remembered to make a halfway convincing lie about what happened. But now, as night rolls in, it's for another reason. My gut's acting up again. Ever since I sat down in the cell, it's been tightening and tightening, a voice in my head telling me to run. I thought maybe the horror of being sent to prison for something I didn't do was setting in, but now I'm thinking differently. My gut's telling me to run, to break out of the cell and run far, far away, because that ragged breathing outside the window, it's a little too familiar. There are two voices again. One's telling me to make a commotion, to scream for a guard. Maybe to try and pick the cell door with a loose bobby pin in my pocket. And another voice is tempting me to look out the window, telling me that it's just a raccoon or something and I'm overreacting, but the other voice then rebuffs with a pretty convincing retort. It's telling me that if I did, I'd be looking at white, hateful eyes hidden behind black, messy hair.